By the rivers of Babylon, yeah, we sat down and we cried when we remembered Jerusalem. We were sick, Lord, near to dying. Oh,
Shalom, shalom. Welcome to another Tanakh review. My name is Zurishaddai, one of the teachers of Congregation BINAH CHOKMAH, located at the Red Hook section of Brooklyn, New York. Our address is 382 Hamilton Avenue, Brooklyn, New York, 11231. Thanking the Creator of heaven and earth for all things and everything, food, clothing, and shelter, knowledge, wisdom, and understanding. Thanking the Most High God for another day alive, and we can't take life for granted. And we understand that the Most High Creator is the giver and taker of life, so we bless His high and holy name. Giving glory to the Most High God for all things and everything, and thanking the Creator for all of my previous teachers and all of my teachers' teachers that allowed us to have this knowledge today, and that allowed me to have this understanding to be able to pass down to my family, to my loved ones, and to those that are out there listening. We thank the Most High God for all of your lives, all the listening audience that diligently tune into us on a weekly basis. We ask that the Creator be with you all and protect you and guide you. Say Shabbat Shalom, or early Shabbat Shalom to each one of you. And I pray that the Creator of heaven and earth be with you. Also sending out a shalom to the leader of our congregation, even Chief Prince Yadiel Ben Yissaskar, that the Most High God be with him, his family, his household, bless them. At this moment, we're going to move on, and we're going to be reviewing Psalm 77, or Nasik Zurishaddai will be reviewing Psalm 77 as he reviews a different psalm or a different part of the book every week. And he is one of my teachers and one of my mentors, even Nasik Zurishaddai. How are you, Nasik?
Great, Baruch Hashem. First of all, I'd like to give praises to the Supreme Eternal Universe, God of my forefathers, God of Abraham, God of Isaac, God of Jacob, and due respect to the platform on the D.C.B channel platform, spiritual leader, Chief Prince Ariel Ben Yissaskar, the host Chief Uzael, to the Prince's Chiefs, Kohanim, Rabbinate, Marine, brothers and sisters and visitors. I greet you in the tongue of my forefathers. Shalom Aleichem, early Shabbat Shalom. Adonai Sabtadi Takufia Giti Latheka. O Lord, unto my lips, my mouth shall declare thy praise. We'll be covering the Psalm 77. That'll be in the third book of Psalms. Psalm 77 kind of relates a little bit, shows some things of relationship to this particular sidra, which is Bo. Bo is an unusual sidra, and when we look at the sidra Bo, which means come, literally means come, but it's translated in most books as go. And that when we look at the Hebrew term, we say, why it makes sense when God telling why would we translate it to say go to Pharaoh when we know automatically it's a word that's an imperative that means come to Pharaoh. So we'll be discussing just a little bit of that briefly, but and also there's always a viewpoint in reference to if we were going to start the book of scriptures and start the Tanakh, as we would say, why start the book of Genesis as opposed to start from this particular, the book of Exodus, but more particularly in the book of Exodus at this particular point. See, a lot of people will think this is a book of law. Some people think it's a book of history. I like to say it's a book, some people say it's a book about God. But I like to say it's a book about man and our relationship to the Creator, and how we must behave before the Creator. So we really have very little laws that we could say in Genesis, and especially as a nation of the nation of Israel. But when we get to this particular portion here of Bo, then we start to get some actual laws that apply to the nation. So, in the beginning of Exodus, it just gives a little bit of rundown of the 12 tribes that was there, and not much said concerning them 12 tribes. And we get a little bit about the event that's going on and happening, and how our oppression began. But if it was a book of law, we get really no law that we're supposed to follow other than Pharaoh's law about, getting rid of our male children. So I'd like to go back just a little bit and bring out, we in the middle of the, we already Pharaoh, the land of Egypt, from the last Sidra, era, that Pharaoh had got hit with 7 plagues already. And one of the plagues I'd like to point out, all of them's miraculous. And we know that the plagues are meant not only to make God known as a war against the other gods of Egypt, but more important, to let everybody know that the Creator could bend the universe and change it at will. And that's what we learn here, that when we think about other ideology of antiquity, their gods have one role only, one area where they're supposed to be dominating in their philosophy and their religious rites. The God we serve can do things at will and control everything that exists. So that makes a unique difference here. And one of the things I'd like to point out in last week's Sidra, like I said, I know I had to skip over quite a bit, but I'd like to bring out some uniqueness here to show you some of the magnitudes of the plague and the mysteries behind it. And one of the things I like to go in the 9th chapter of Exodus in the 8th verse. And it said, and the Lord said unto Moses and unto Aaron, take to you a handful of soot of the furnace, and let Moses throw it heavenwards in the sight of Pharaoh, and it shall become small dust all over the land of Egypt, and shall be a boil breaking forth with blains upon man and upon beast throughout all the land of Egypt. And they took soot of the furnace and stood before Pharaoh, and Moses threw it up heavenward, and it became a boil breaking forth with blains upon man and upon beast. The magicians could not stand before Moses because of the boils, for the boils were upon the magicians and upon all the Egyptians. And the Lord hardened the heart of Pharaoh, and he hearkened not unto them, as the Lord had spoken to Moses. Now, what I find so unique is that it's rough enough for Aaron got 2 handfuls of ashes. Moses got 2 handfuls of ashes, and they put it in Moses' hand. And Moses throwing it up. How high could he throw ashes? Ashes usually start to spread out the minute you start to make a move. But you're supposed to throw it up. How high can you throw it? That's number one. And he's impaired, the plague doesn't hit him or Aaron or any of the children of Israel. And it's throughout the whole land. And the thing is that dust don't go upward. The minute you take ashes and try to do that, it spreads all over the place. And how could 4 handfuls fit in one hand? Those are some of the miraculous things where you could actually stack dust up where it actually stand that high. So those are some of the strange things that's going on. Then the next plague, that's coming behind that, is the plague of fire and air, hell. So you got ice and fire working together, 2 opposing elements joined together and performing God's will. So those are some of the things that, that we look at in reference to the miracles, not just the plagues that's being done, but how they ever being performed by the individual. All right. So now in the opening the book of Exodus, the 10th chapter, and the 10th chapter of a bowl, the Sidra bowl, the portion goes from Exodus, the 10th chapter, first verse, to Exodus, the 13th chapter, the 16th verse. The Haftorah that goes along with it is Jeremiah, the 46th chapter of Jeremiah, starting at the 13th verse, going to the 28th verse. The psalm I'll be reading to try to tie things in will be Psalm 77, which is part of the third book of Psalms. So as I said before, the title itself, Bo, is strange in that sense. And it's the first time, and it covers the last series of plagues, which is 3 more plagues to hit Egypt, which would be the plague of the locust, the plague of darkness, and the plague of the death of the firstborn. But what we look at is that, and the Lord said to Moses, go in unto Pharaoh, for I have hardened his heart and the heart of his servants, that I might show these my signs in the midst of them, and that they mayest tell, and that thou mayest tell in the ears of thy son and of thy son's son what I have brought upon Egypt, and my signs which I have done among them, that they may know that I am the Lord. So the purpose of the plague and this liberation and the actual process that's being taken here is not just to enlighten Pharaoh and the rest of the world, but for Israelites to know, because we've been there for 4 generations. And since we've been there 4 generations, roughly about 210 years, I know the book say 430, and that's another story that I spoke on before. But actually 210 years of actual time there from the time that Jacob went there. And when we look at it in that light, and the slavery, the real hard oppression was about 86 years. And then, the decree to slay all the males had to be less than 83, because Aaron's 3 years older than Moses, and he wasn't in no danger. So, so we get a timeline along that. So here it is that the Israelites, all that time, they've been acculturated and started adopting some philosophies of Egyptian culture. And as we look a little further, this time God told Moses to come to Pharaoh. So when he's coming, it's like saying the Creator's there. So why did the Creator had to tell Moses to come this time, as opposed to, come to Pharaoh, instead of just send them like he'd been sending them all the time before? So it's a lot of stories, viewpoints and commentaries on that. But I like to, let y'all discuss it amongst your various leaders and teachers, that the word bow that we use, and it still means the same thing. It means to come. If the Creator say come, that means I'm there ahead of you. Then if the Creator's there ahead of you, why he wasn't there in the first place? You got to ask all these questions there. And they're coming to Pharaoh. So why this time the Creator going to want you to come to Pharaoh? Is Moses afraid of Pharaoh? Is he reluctant? You got to ask those questions. He was reluctant to go in the first place to Egypt, but that's been passed with all these plagues that hit. And so why is it now that the Creator's telling him to come? And it maybe to try to reach Pharaoh, talk to Pharaoh, and where Pharaoh might could be reached on a particular level. So there's a lot of things to discuss in reference to Moses, in this term, bow. And I'd like to go a little further. And when in this particular portion, and I like to pick it up, that when the locusts came, all right, and we talk about the locusts in this particular area. All right. All right, but before we go there, I like to bring out in the same chapter, the 10th chapter. All right, so now you're talking about the locusts to eat and everything. Now we know the locusts, when we get the plague of the locusts, we know the hell destroyed a lot of stuff. We know they had a lot of stuff destroyed. But I had this controversy with people that asked what the locusts going to eat. And it says, I pick it up from the 4th verse. Else if thou refuse to let my people go, behold, tomorrow I will bring locusts unto thy borders, and they shall cover the face of the earth, that one shall not be able to see the earth. They shall eat the residue of that which is escaped, which remaineth unto you from the hell. So that means the hell only destroyed a little bit. There was still some produce still in the land. So that answers the questions for people wondering what the locusts going to eat. And it says, and you shall shall eat every tree which groweth for you out of the field, and thy houses shall be filled, and the houses of all thy servants, and the house of all the Egyptians, neither thy fathers nor their fathers' father have seen since the day that they were upon the earth unto this day. And he turned and went out from Pharaoh. Now this Moses giving this decree to Pharaoh. And Pharaoh's servant said unto him, how long shall this man be a snare unto us? Let the men go, that they may serve the Lord their God. Thou knowest not, knowest thou not yet that Egypt is destroyed? And Moses and Aaron were brought again unto Pharaoh, and he said unto them, go serve the Lord your God. But who are they that shall go? And Moses said, we will go with our young and with our old, and with our sons and with our daughters, and with our flocks and with our herds. We will go, for we must hold a feast unto the Lord. And then it goes on to say, and he said unto them, so be the Lord with you, as I will let you go, and your little ones. See ye that evil is before your face? Not so. Go now, ye that are men, and serve the Lord, for that is what ye desire. And they were driven out from Pharaoh's presence. All right. So now, what we find here, and I'd like to bring out, is that the servants themselves, they was kind of worried. Now they supposed to be hardened, but they're bringing this to Pharaoh because Moses had left. So if we tend to miss that. Moses had said what he said and stepped out. But then Pharaoh had to call him back and try to work it out. Now he couldn't see that, the children is necessary for worship. Most people think, even Israelites sometimes today don't think that children need to be come to services. I don't understand that. So, the kids got to come, even if they're young. It's something they will remember, something they will experience. But the worship here at Mount Sinai, we had everybody there at Mount Sinai. The old, the young, the hewers of wood, everybody was there at Mount Sinai. Also, we know that we're talking about a feast. A lot of people, most brothers always figure, when we come to Passover, I'm going a little ahead of things, that Passover is not considered a feast. But they say CHOKMAH is a feast, but Passover is a feast. And you can find it written in the book where, Pesach is called, a Chag. But this is the term we find the Chag here used as a feast that's going to be observed by the Most High. All right. Now, which feast we're going to talk about? That's another episode, because we know Passover that we're going to keep the very first Passover. We actually going to keep right there in the land of Egypt. when we go look even further, you know, that Pharaoh drove him out of his presence, he was upset because that didn't seem like you need to take everything, all your belongings, and you're only going 3 days. Why everything got to go? And what we fail to realize is that at this time, when the first plague hit, when the river turned to blood, all the waters of Egypt turned into blood, Israelites wasn't working anymore. There was no work to be done. They wasn't being enslaved, but they're doing hard labor now, because there's so much drama going on about the recovery from the drama that it's really no work for the Egyptians to put them through. So from the very first plague, they already stopped being working hard as slaves. So that's something to imagine, you know, and think about as we go on. We think that we had to wait to the very end when we start working, but from the very first plague that Moses did, it wasn't working, because who could work in them conditions? And plagues hitting right after back to back, you cannot work. So they already free from the laborious work of physical slave labor. So now let's look at a little bit more of what's going on here. And it said, and the Lord said to Moses, stretch out the hand over the land of Egypt for the locusts, that they may come upon the land of Egypt and eat every herb of the land, even all that the hell hath left. And Moses stretched forth his rod over the land of Egypt, and the Lord brought an east wind upon the land all that day and all the night. And when it was morning, the east wind brought the locusts. And the locusts went up over all the land of Egypt and rested in all the borders of Egypt. Very grievous were they. Before them, there were no such locusts as they, neither after them shall be such. That's the sense of one-time historical event. I'm going to skip down to the 15th verse. It said, for they covered the face of the whole earth, so that the land was darkened, and they did eat every herb of the land, and all the fruit of the trees which a hell had left. And there remained not any green thing, either green tree or herb of the field, through all the land of Egypt. Then Pharaoh called for Moses and Aaron in haste, and he said, I have sinned against the Lord your God and against you. Now, therefore, forgive, I pray thee, my sin only this once, and entreat the Lord your God that he may take away from me this death only. And he went out from Pharaoh and entreated the Lord. And the Lord turned an exceeding strong west wind and took up the locusts and drove them into the Red Sea. There remained not one locust in all the borders of Egypt. But the Lord hardened Pharaoh's heart, and he did not let the children of Israel go. Now, I like to, before I go, and the reason I'm just reading a little bit more on these plagues here, the last three, because there's a lot of little gems in here, and nuggets, something to consider as we go forth. But what we find here is that in verse 17, that's when Pharaoh asked for forgiveness. And he asked forgiveness not from the Creator, but from Moses and Aaron. Now, you will say, why he asked for them to forgive him and not the Creator? Because before the Exodus, we haven't had no evidence in our history where a God ever forgave anybody. And Pharaoh didn't have that in his doctrine, where the gods forgive. We learn about forgiveness only really, when we get to the sin of the golden calf. That's when we learn about forgiveness. Now that's something marvel to think about, that prior to this point in time, the sin of the golden calf, which after we left out of Egypt and been gone, and Moses went up in the mountain to get the tablets, and then he had to go back and pray for us. That's the first time we as a people know and notice that God can forgive. Now, so most of us would say, well, that should be obvious. We don't have an example of it in the scriptures. Pharaoh didn't have no idea, of a God forgiving. No other religion or ancient people that had a God had an idea of God forgiving. But they know men can forgive one another. So therefore, Pharaoh didn't ask the God who created everything, the God who he hardened his heart against, the God that he didn't say, well, I don't know who this guy is. To me, he's not important. He's looking at Moses and Aaron to forgive him. So that's very important to think about as we go forward in this here, to show you the magnitude of that. The concept of forgiveness did not even exist in the minds of people, or where we see evidence of it in the scriptures. We don't see it until the sin of the golden calf. So that's something to consider as we go forward. And then we know after that, like I said before, the 21st verse, and we read about, and the Lord said unto Moses, stretch out thy hand towards heaven, that there may be darkness over the land of Egypt, even darkness which may be felt. And Moses stretched forth his hand towards heaven, and there was thick darkness in all the land of Egypt 3 days. And they saw not one another, neither rose any from his place for 3 days. For all the children of Israel had light in their dwellings. And Pharaoh called unto Moses and said, go ye serve the Lord the Lord, only let your flocks and your herds be stayed. Let your little ones also go with you. And Moses said, thou must also give into our hands sacrifices and burnt offerings, that we may sacrifice unto the Lord our God. Our cattle also shall go with us. There shall not a hoof be left behind, for there must we take to serve the Lord our God. We know not with what we must serve the Lord until we come thither. But the Lord hardened Pharaoh's heart, and he would not let them go. And Pharaoh said unto him, get thee from me, take heed to thyself, see my face no more, for in the day that thou seest my face, thou shalt die. And Moses said, thou hast spoken well, I will see thy face again no more. Before we go to the last part, and I'm going to read everything here, I just want to bring out a couple important points, because this is the climax of things. When we look at this particular portion of the scriptures, and what we find remarkable in it is that Pharaoh kept trying to give in little by little. And he said, go ahead, serve your God. If you're going to worship, go worship. You're going to pray, go pray. But leave your cattle here. Leave some security here. Because we can't let all the money leave, all the livestock leave. Because we had so many plagues that devastated the Egyptians, for the most part, that we got to have something in the economy. And also, when it comes down to most sacrifices, when we look at it for Egyptian, for the most part, not saying 100%, for the most part, you don't really see where Egyptians actually offer animal sacrifice. For the most part, you don't see that. That they actually had a thing where it's actually doing a lot of animal sacrificing. So how they worship, it's unique in itself. But that's why, as we get into the last one about the Passover story, that's really a real strong stand, because you really don't find that Egyptians actually, and for the most part, not saying that they didn't at all, but in general, offer up animal sacrifice. So that's something to consider there. Also, when we talk about the plague of darkness, at this time, like I said in the beginning, every third plague was unannounced. So 2 plagues announced, third one's not announced. 2 plagues announced. The 6th one is not announced. 7 and 8 is announced. The 9th one, the plague of darkness, not announced. Now, so much going on in the darkness, but the last plagues from the hail to the locust to the plague of darkness all has something to do with darkness, because hell coming down, fire and ice. I mean, and it's coming down in such abundance that it makes the sky a little bit dark. And people that have seen a regular hailstorm, notice that it ain't a bright sunny day most of the times. So we got fire coming down with the hail, so there's a little bit of darkness. Then the locust coming up made it even more darker. And then finally, it get pitch black, where the darkness that could be felt. Now, it's a lot of commentaries are saying, I don't like to, get into that when I speak on a general program like this. But it did say that the Israelites had light in their dwelling, but it never said in the land of Goshen. So what they make a lot of people pick the word from their dwellings, where their settlements, wherever they be at, that the Israelites are able to have some kind of light, like they are a beacon of light. That's that's something that just people just discuss. And if you're one of them schools that believe in that, then that's one of your belief system. That doesn't change the scenario or what I'm saying. I think that the higher thing is that that the Israelites only had light in their location, but when they went into where the Egyptians was at, it was darkened throughout the land of Egypt, except for Goshen. And it was so darkness that you could feel a thick darkness that immobilized the people. And that's what we read pretty much here. So imagine you sitting still, can't even move. A darkness that you actually could feel. Now, those that ever been camping in the woods or be down south or drive on the highway at night, on certain parts of the highway when you're driving on the interstate at night, in some areas, the only lights you have is the light from your vehicle and the stars if you could see it. But that plague of darkness means they couldn't see a star. They could not even see a star up in the sky. The moon could not do anything for them at that time. Not one star, not one glimmer of light. You couldn't even strike a match. The darkness that thick that if you struck a match, it would do you no good. It wouldn't illuminate any kind of light. So that's something to consider. And the Psalm is one of the Psalms that talks about, some of the thoughts that goes on. Now, we know as people today in modern day world that when you go to your house, most of the times, you turn a light. And, if it's at night and it's dark in your house, you turn a light or leave a light on. But if there's no light on, you turn a light. And when you put the key in the door in the keyhole, most times you make a little noise to say, well, if anything in there, you want them to get a heads up. When you come inside, I don't want to disturb nobody. I don't want nobody to disturb me. And you expect no one to be there when you left the house empty. So darkness makes a person consider. Darkness brings about a certain type of fear. Darkness make you really contemplate all the demons that you might have and compare it with the virtues that you might have. So when you're in a state of darkness like that you say, well, okay, what does that mean? That not only I can't move, I'm thinking. And how I'm thinking, what's going on in my mind? Could I come to grips with myself? Do I feel satisfied with myself? So in the dark recesses of the heart, we always talk about, but here it is that physically they're in a state of darkness at this particular time. And this one's not announced. And they're in it for several days, that thick darkness. So imagine that, what's going on in your mind at the time. And then what's unique, I always like to bring this out, that while all this time and all these plagues are hitting Egypt, the rest of the world is not being affected by the plagues. It's only that little corridor there. No one attacked Egypt. No one tried to take advantage of Egypt in its weakness. Not no other surrounding nations. So the Creator didn't allow nobody else to mess with Egypt. Only He dealt with it firsthand. and for the sake of his people. All right. And now we know he told Moses to leave, but let's just read the last thing and then move on from there. All right. And it says in the 11th chapter, and the Lord said unto Moses, yet one more plague I will bring upon Pharaoh and upon Egypt. Afterwards, he will let you go hence. When he shall let you go, he shall surely thrust you out hence altogether. Speak now in the ears of the people, and let them ask every man of his neighbor, and every woman of her neighbor, jewels of silver and jewels of gold. And the Lord gave the people favor in the sight of the Egyptians. Moreover, the man Moses was very great in the land of Egypt, in the sight of Pharaoh's servants, and in the sight of the people. And Moses said, thus said the Lord, about midnight will I go out into the midst of Egypt, and all the firstborn in the land of Egypt shall die, from the firstborn of Pharaoh that sitteth upon the throne, his throne, even unto the firstborn of the maidservant that is behind the mill, and all the firstborn of cattle. And there shall be a great cry throughout all the land of Egypt, such as there had not been none like it, nor shall be like it anymore. But against any of the children of Israel shall not a dog wet his tongue against a man or beast, that ye may know how that the Lord does put a difference between the Egyptians and Israel. And all these thy servants shall come down unto me and bow unto me, and saying, get thee out, and all the people that follow thee. And after that I will go out. And he went out from Pharaoh in hot anger. Pharaoh told him to leave, but Moses had to tell him that last message. Now, what's unique on this here, and I want people to, I want people to really focus on this. What time was the plague of blood? What time was the plague when the frogs came? What time was the plague, plague when they struck the thing and it became lice? All these unannounced plagues. The 3 plagues that's pretty much unannounced, and the others that was announced. What time that happened? Only this one here. The last one, he said, about midnight, this gonna go down. I'm giving you a time frame. That's something. It's almost like, okay, you get ready to go into the gas chamber at such time, or the electric chair at such time, or take the needle at such time. Well, this is the only plague that comes with a time that is supposed to go down. And being prepared for that moment, that's traumatic. And you notice this also going to take place in the dark at night. And what's unique is that a lot of people always talk about the death angel, but I just want to let you know that it's focused on that the Creator going to handle this personally. It takes away when everybody thinks about the death angel going through the land of Egypt that night and slaying all the firstborn. There's nowhere written that the death angel did this. This is a personal thing. And just to fast forward a little bit, we don't, you take away the glory of the Creator, because how would an angel know who's the firstborn of the cattle? Who's a real firstborn or not? Who's all Egyptian or not Egyptian? We got to know all that. You had some Israelites that was Egyptian on their father's side, but on the mother's side, they're Israelites, which we got in the book. And you most likely had people on the other side, Egyptian on their mother's side, but on their father's side, the Israelites, just such as Joseph's kids, Joseph's children, except those that believe in rabbinic teachings on reference to who Asenath was. But let's look a little bit further before I go into the Psalms a little bit. We know that what we find here, and I'm just going to bring out this here, the 12th chapter. I'm skipping into the 12th chapter just a little bit. And it says, and the Lord spoke unto Moses and Aaron in the land of Egypt, saying, this month shall be unto you the beginning of months. It shall be the first month of the year to you. Speak ye unto all the congregation of Israel, saying, in the 10th day of this month, they shall take to them every man a lamb according to the father's houses, a lamb for a household. And if the household be too little for a lamb, then shall he and his neighbor next to his house take one according to the number of the souls, according to every man's eating. You shall make your account for the lamb. Your lamb shall be without blemish, a male of the first year. You shall take it from the sheep or from the goats, and you shall keep it unto the 14th day of the same month. And the whole assembly of the congregation of Israel shall kill it at dusk, and they shall take of the blood and put it on the two side posts and the lintels upon the houses wherein they shall eat it. And they shall eat the flesh in that night, roast with fire and unleavened bread with bitter herbs. They shall eat it. Eat not of it raw, nor sodden at all with water, but roast with fire his head with his legs and with the inwards thereof. And ye shall let nothing of it remain until the morning. But that which remaineth of it until the morning, ye shall burn with fire. And thus ye shall eat it with your loins girded, your shoes on your feet, and your staff in your hand, and you shall eat it in haste. It is the Lord's Passover. For I will go through the land of Egypt in the night, and I will smite all the firstborn in the land of Egypt, both man and beast, and against all the gods of Egypt I will execute judgment. I am the Lord. And the blood shall be to you for a token upon the houses wherein ye are. And when I see the blood, I will pass over you. There shall no plague be upon you to destroy you when I smite the land of Egypt. And this shall be unto you for a memorial. And you shall keep it a feast to the Lord throughout your generations. You shall keep it a feast by ordinance forever. And it goes on in little details. All right. So instead of reading the whole thing to save time, it goes on to some little details here as well. All right. To be done annually. So what we got unique here, and the reason I wanted to focus on this because it's not that far off for the Passover season, and we're supposed to talk about this story and remember the Passover every day of our life, but we're supposed to talk about that more so on that night. And but we got one law. You know, the first law we got as a nation is the Rosh Chodesh Amun. You know, the month of Aviv, which means spring. That's the first law we got as a nation of people to observe. We're observing the month of Aviv, you know, as they call it, which is springtime's month. And why? We're getting a lunar calendar. So let's say we got to be able to, you know, and what's strange about that, we're supposed to observe that month, but it don't give us no detail how to observe it. Not one detail is written about how to observe the month of Aviv. That's strange. But it told this to Moses and Aaron. And said that, and when it says this, it's almost like a pointing. When I say this, I'm like actually pointing, giving direction, you know. So that's something to consider when you discuss things, that why now we got to have another set of calendar, you know, as opposed to everybody else to have a, you know, a different type of calendar. We got the mark time differently. And why dealing with the moon where everybody else mostly dealt with a solar year and mostly dealt with the sun more so. Now, Abraham and the Chaldea, they mostly had, you know, moon deity and everything like that, or the Chaldean or Castine. But in Egypt, sun god was like one of the major deities here. And most people look at the sun for the benefit, because when you look at the sun, what you do, you see the sun is made up, you know, got fire, and it has its light within itself, and it's given like on the earth. You know what I mean? So everybody see the benefits of the sun. So the sun have light within itself and is giving what it has to the earth. So most people will think, oh, the sun itself is basically, you know, a life-sustaining force. Whereas the moon, it reflects the light of the sun. And then, so since the moon reflects the light of the sun, then why would that be something that we would be identified with more so, and being supposed to be an observant more so? What can we learn from that? And some of the things we can learn from that is that just like the moon doesn't hold what it gets, it extends what it gets to something else. The sun only giving what it has. The moon said, I'm sharing what I'm getting. As an Israelite, we share what we get. We get essence, we get, you know, not only knowledge, but we're supposed to be a blessing to the world as an Israelites. So, and we don't just look to be blessed, we look to share the blessing. So a moon is actually sharing and reflecting that blessing. Another thing also, that when we look at a slave itself, his time is dictated by his master. But when you start your own calendar, you're saying, now, no man gonna dictate my time. My time is dictated by me calling my time, observing them, when I call it as the Rosh Kodesh. So I'm dictating my time. So that's a sign of freedom right there, because the slave time is his master's time, where he just designate. But here now it's showing you're free. As the moon, it goes through phases. It goes from, you know, what you consider a new moon, and all the way up to a full moon. Then it seems like it disappeared, but it's never disappeared. It's still there. And it reemerge again, stronger and stronger and brighter. That's the way Israelites is. As we look at ourselves and we say, we seem like we almost leaving, disappearing, we still reappear even stronger and more vigorous. So now, what else I like to bring up before I go into the song? I'm gonna stop right here. I'm looking at my time. That when we look at this here observance of the Rosh Kodesh, we know automatically we're not told how to do it, but yet we're told when it comes to the Passover, what time, what animals, and how to cook it. We got a cooking menu. So since we got a cooking manual, and we got a dress code. Can you imagine that? So we got the time we're supposed to have this feast. We got the menu for the feast, and we're told how to dress, and also eat it quickly. And one hand is filled with something, a staff, shoes on your feet. So this is something to consider when you say, well, you got a written law, and then you got an oral interpretation. When it comes to the Rosh Kodesh, you get an oral interpretation, and then you get a written law when it comes to actually observance this particular first Passover. All right, so those are some of the things to think about, and I'll probably visit something later on in reference to that as we go through next week. But one of the things I like to lead before we speak on before we go is that we know when the Pharaoh coming out, the creator, destroyer of the firstborn of Egypt, and Pharaoh wanted to send us out and rush us out, but we go ahead and get the gold, the jewelry, and everything else in the clothes. Can you imagine the insensitivity at that time what the Egyptians had to go through? Your dead is laying right there. You just lost somebody in your family, and every house lost somebody in the family. And you gonna tell me you need some gold, you need some silver, you need some, you need some clothes, and I got a son that's dead right now. Where is the sympathy? Where's the compassion? Excuse me, Tutut. I got to go, but I'm sorry for your loss. May the Creator, look out for you and comfort you with all of the mourners of Egypt, similar to what we say about Israel, but all the mourners of Egypt. And but I got to leave in the morning. So that gold piece you had, I need to borrow that. That little diamond chains or whatever, stuff like that. I need to borrow that. The clothes, I need that for my kid over here. Because we got an appointment tomorrow. So I know it's a rough time, and I feel sorry for your loss. Would you want to be visited like that at that time? So can you imagine what the Egyptian had to go through? So I'm just painting a story before we go into the next episode next time. But those are some of the things to consider. That what's going on in the people mindset. So we go straight to the book of Psalms right there, 77. Hallelujah.
We're going to the 77th Psalm. Psalm 77, starting from verse 1. Hallelujah.
Hallelujah.
It reads, a second.
For
the leader, for Yehudah, a psalm of Asaph. I will lift up my voice unto God and cry. I will lift up my voice unto God that he may give ear unto me.
Hold it right there. All right. Now we know if every whole nation is crying, it's drama. So I guess that's some of the things you can see. The Egyptian had to cry heavy, but this is an individual. Now this the leader. This is a psalm written by Asaph, not by David. It's written by Asaph. So this is one of these psalms that's not written by King David himself. And it's written for the leader. Now, this guy, Yehudah, you'll find his name in the Chronicles, First Chronicles, around 16th chapter, near the 41st verse. Now, he's supposed to be like one of the chief musicians that David set up. Him and also Asaph, and Heman. All right, so they believe that he's one of the most chief, the head of all the musicians, and they're supposed to sing. They sing in their courses in the time, and he's the main guy. So, and you read about his name a couple of times in the Chronicles and stuff like that, and his position. But what's unique is that here, the way the psalmists cry out, and this is supposed to be a psalm of Asaph. So this is more Asaph's feelings. And why would Asaph feel like that? So we always think about David right away, but this is actually this guy. Okay, he the one who wrote this song. And he said, I need you to play this here. I need you to sing this tune. While you in worship service, I need to hear this. All right. So now let's go on a little bit further. Now, also I like to point out, in some King James version, they might have 20 verses in the psalm. In our book, we have 21 verses. So just where some people might look at our verses in a book in the Masoretic text as opposed to the King James version. So where in most King James version it would be only 20 verses, but in the text, same song, still complete, but we have 21 verses the way it's split down. All right, continue.
Verse 3. In the day of my trouble, I seek Yehovah, or I seek Adonai.
Okay, come on.
The Lord. With my hand uplifted, mine eyes streameth in the night without ceasing. My soul refuseth to be comforted.
Hold right there. Imagine, people say, I just can't sleep. I wonder if they had all that darkness for 3 days. Could the Egyptians sleep for them 3 days?
Right.
Because your heart might sound too loud. Somebody cough, that might be a problem.
Right.
So, you might know what's going on over there. Where you at? So here's the psalmist saying, I got so much on my mind now. I got so much happening now that I can't even go to sleep on it and blot it out. Now that's something. And when you close your eyes, you got what? Darkness. But even the dark, closing my eyes, I still can't go into an unconscious sleep. Now this is real. This to show you how desperate this individual is. Continue.
Verse 4. When I think thereon, O God, I must moan. When I muse thereon, my spirit fainteth, Selah.
Hold right there. Hold it. That means right then that I'm thinking about God and I'm still not satisfied. Can you imagine that? You know, I'm in a situation where things are already bad. And the more I think about God, the worse I feel. How does that sound? I mean, what's going on here? And some people actually be in situations like that. So I just don't want to think about God now because I'm feeling too bad. I don't want to talk about God now because I feel too bad. And here's a psalmist that's one of the guys that's really supposed to be singing and praying when people come up to worship, at the tabernacle when the temple was set up. All right. And he just said, when I think on the Lord, I must moan. That's a rough one. All right. And talking about my spirit fainteth and Salah, he got to take a pause for a moment. That's too rough for him. Once he says Salah, I got to take a pause. I got to take a break. Things are just that bad. Let me re-strengthen myself so I can moan some more. Let's read on, 5th verse.
Verse 5 reads, Thou holdest fast the lids of my eyes. I am troubled and cannot speak. I have pondered the days of old, the years of ancient times. In the night I will call to remembrance my song. I will commune with my own heart, and my spirit maketh diligent search.
Hold right there. He said, look, God, I don't know what's going on, but right now, I better check myself out for a minute. I better start working out here because right now, I'm not, just thinking about you caused me a problem. So let me look why I got this problem just thinking about you. I'm the one feeling this. I know you could remedy this situation, but this problem here, I got to go ahead and look at. You know what I mean? So I got to think about that. Why I'm in this situation? Why I'm looking at it so bleak? It's hard to tell somebody that's really, really feeling miserable and really feeling that the world is, is caving in on them to talk about, don't worry about that. I mean, it's really difficult, It could have been worse. What you know about it? I'm going through it. So, this is a lesson, for people that has to reach that particular spot in their life. But read a little bit further. What it says.
Verse 8, it reads, Will the Lord cast off forever? And will he be favorable will he be favorable no more? Is his mercy clean gone forever? Is his promise come to an end forevermore? Have God forgotten to be gracious? Have he in anger shut up his compassion? Salah.
Stop right there. We got to take a pause now. Because now, God, you must be out of business. God, you must not working like we understood you to work before in the past. God, I can't see things getting better, man, because what's going on? You know what I mean? You still up there. Of course you're still up there. But what you doing? Can't you see my situation? This is some of the things that sometimes we wonder if God really looking at our situation. And do he care about our situation? I need to know. Some people like to know. No matter what you tell them, they're going to say, you ain't God. I mean, we try to cheer some people up when they get to that state. And also, sometimes what it teaches you here, that people could get into that state that no matter what you tell them, no matter how much you care for them, you won't be able to pull them out of that state. And that's one of the things to look at. So let's pick it up from the 11th verse.
Let us go to the 11th verse. It reads, And I say, this is my weakness, that the right hand of the Most High could change. I will make mention of the deeds of Yehovah. Yea, I will remember thy wonders of old. I will meditate also upon thy work and muse on thy doings. O God.
All right, all right. That means I'm right then. Now he's starting to change it. The first part of this psalm is all about him. Now I said, no, I got to take myself out the equation because I'm the problem. This next part of the song going to be about the Creator, and that's where sometimes you got to realize that as an individual when it comes to your life, you be thinking about all the stuff that's going on with you, and I'm this and I'm that, I'm having this and I'm having that, and I can't see my way out of this. I know, what's going on, blase. Nobody, people trying to tell me and help me, but yet at this time, I'm going through it. And I can't even think about God. But then I had to get myself together and start to say, look at here. I'm thinking like I'm the one running things. And they got to take myself out of the equation. Let's pick it up a little bit more.
Verse 14. O God, thy way is in holiness. Who is a great God like unto God? Says, thou art the God that doest wonders. Thou hast made known thy strength among the peoples.
That's what he's doing about the Exodus. That's why we talk about the Exodus. You know what I mean? That the Creator let him know that I can handle all other topics, everything in life. There's nothing beyond my control. Read the 16th verse.
Verse 16, it reads, thou hast with thine arm redeemed thy people, the sons of Yaakov and Joseph, Selah.
All right there. Why they throw Joseph in? You know what I mean? And why he need to be redeemed. Now the sons of Yaakov, we can understand it, but the sons of Joseph, why him? That's something to discuss. I'm just going to move it on a little bit faster, till I get to the
verse 17.
The end of this.
The waters, verse 17, the waters saw thee, O God. The waters saw thee. They were in pain. The depths also trembled. The clouds flooded forth waters. The sky sent out the sound. Thine arrows also went abroad. The voice of thy thunder was in the whirlwind. The lightnings lighted up the world. The earth trembled and shook. Thy way was in the sea, and thy path in the great waters, and thy footsteps were not known.
All right, before we go to the last verse, I want to focus on that 12th verse. 20th verse, 20th verse. All right. That way was in the sea, the path in the great waters, and thy footsteps were not known. Now, the reason I want to focus on that because, most people used to see them little signs that say, I don't remember exactly how it went, but I remember that it was basically you walking in the sand, and you're supposed to be, walking with God in the sand, and you got a little weary, in the sand. You were wondering if God was with you, because this is a depressed individual that's trying to come out of his depression. And so I wonder if God is really with me. So, you had two footprints in the sand. Then all of a sudden, you go a little further, and you see one set of footprints. And you say, well, I thought God was with me, and then the way the story goes, I'm paraphrasing because I don't remember exactly how it was, because that's basically from another school of thought, is that, he said, you was tired, so I carry you, so the footprints you see is mine. Well, we as Israelites take it to another higher level, and the reason I say we ain't looking for the footprints in the sand, because it said God brought us out on eagle wings. And that means right then and there that you don't need to get your foot way down in the sand. You know what I mean? He said, I brought you out on eagle's wings. That means that an eagle would fight any attack on his young. Any attack, no matter what's the size, an eagle will fight to the death to protect his young. The eagle carries his young up on his wings. So an eagle, so when it said about the Exodus, that he said, I brought you out on eagle's wings, you didn't need to really worry about putting your footprints in the sand or look for footprints. It said, when we went across the sea on dry ground, if it's dry enough, we ain't gonna see no footprint. Sand is hard to walk in the first place. So when the Creator said he brought it out on eagle's wing, that means swiftly and royally. That's how we came out of Egypt. So for us as Israelites, we don't look for two sets of footprints to become one footprint. We look for the airways to salvation. That's what we look for. And that's the difference between our viewpoint in relationship to the Exodus, as opposed to that, it's good for those people that like that. What I mean? But I'm saying, well, for us, we hold to a higher authority, and we recognize a higher authority in that sense. All right. So in the last verse,
verse 21, thou didst lead thy people like a flock by the hand of Moses and Aaron. Hallelujah.
Hallelujah. So even though Aaron and Moses at the front, it wasn't them that's leading. It wasn't them that lead. It was the Creator leading us. So even though we had some bodies there that we know, they just was a tool, but they couldn't do no more than the Creator did. So here's the psalmist, Asaph, who wrote this to the chief musician, to play this, because the chief musician ain't feeling like that. It's Asaph that must be feeling like that. And trying to give people encouragement, because if you're gonna be the singers at the Mishkan and later on the temple, all right, the tabernacle and later on the temple itself, then they want people to know that you coming where you could get some kind of help. You're never that far where you can't get some help if you want it. And so we learned a couple of things in this particular sidra about the art of forgiveness, which that man only thought man is able to forgive, but didn't think God was able to forgive. And later on in our history, we find that, at the sin of the golden calf, that God is able to forgive. And then when we look at people that worship and serve the true and living God, they think everything's supposed to revolve around them. Because the psalmist in the first, I think if I miscount, I'm not sure, he mentioned about I or me about 10 times. And then he started talking about the Creator about 10 times. Said, look, let me just balance this off. So I hope you got something out of what I said, and any mistakes by my own. And before I leave, I'd like to speak on a couple of things before I leave off this here program. Because I heard, I got the opportunity to listen to a Holocaust survivor Wednesday just passed, and she's about 93, and she's telling her story about the Holocaust. So main thing, I was listening and asked her, other than the Creator, how you get the strength to continue to go over and over again and relive that story? Because I know you've been asked many times, and usually a person that has such a tragic in their life, when they got to repeat it and go over it, just like living the tragedy again and again and again over, and each time, it don't get easier, it get worse. So how you do it? And her statement to me was that, it was to everybody, but I'm just, I'm the one that hadn't asked the question. And she said that in her lifetime, certain information was saying like certain things didn't happen. Now, she had an experience herself that she actually lived. She even said she went through certain trials, Nazi trials in Germany, and seen justice procured, which people of color, we won't have that, because a lot of people that did the atrocities to us, like certain people in our history, or even contemporary, lived and died without no kind of trial on this side of the planet. So she said, if there was changing it so much now, and people believe that this didn't happen or that didn't happen, because they didn't have radios and all that, all they had was the newspaper, and a lot of the people thought, it was a passing phase through propaganda. So they didn't think something was going to happen like that on that level, because a lot of them was patriotic to wherever they were. And she said, that's why I tell my story, because I want the truth to be told, because if they changed it in my lifetime, what happened if I die? How much, there'd be nobody left to really say it didn't happen that way. So that kind of, the reason I say I'm just going to share that a little bit, because I know people, Prince Yaakov that founded BINAH King, one of the founders, with the late Nabi Raphael, Rabbi Raphael, and Caleb and Prince Caleb and Prince Abner, some of the founders of BINAH King. Some people believe that I was at his funeral. He was born in 1925 of June. 1925, June 27th, 1925, and he died. In 1991 in November, buried December 5th. Some people would say, well, his funeral was in a church, and his funeral was in a funeral chapter. I was there, and several brothers were there. Matter of fact, only two of us that's listed on the program is still around now. That was there at the funeral. It was Prince Daniel. There's quite a few other brothers, but I'm saying listed on the program. Prince Daniel, Prince Reuben, and Cohen Adib was there, but he put it down as Chief Adib, but he's actually was a Cohen. So you know that somebody else other than one of us had wrote up the program, and they had me down as brother Zurishaddai Katan, and I had brother Yehudah down there as well. Both all us officers though. And I looked at one of the things said that he came to Chicago and started BINAH King, the second place BINAH King in 1967. And I know for a fact Prince didn't go to Chicago to 1969, because that's when I went down there with him in 1969. Chief Simeon and quite a few 12 brothers came up in 1968. After King was assassinated, they came up to camp in 1968. So and so I just want to set some of those things straight in that area there, because I'm looking at, if you look at the obituary and you say, well, he went to Chicago in 1967, so it's written right here in black and white, but it's not true. He didn't go to Chicago until 1969. And when you look at when people talk about, well, he was buried in funeralized in a church, that's not true. I was there. I didn't go to the grave site, but the grave site was a cemetery called Mount Hope Cemetery. That's the name of the cemetery. That's it. So if I see that people are changing certain history of BINAH King, and most times the people that talk was people that never was there, never grew up in that situation. And if they're changing it in my little bit of time, what happens later on? And thank God, the Chief Uziel that got a lot of historical records and stuff like that over a period of time, because it got to be another page to our history from the various countries. Just like he might have from this segment, other people have their segment of history of their particular group, all around the world. So when God gathered us from the four corners of the earth, then there are going to be some other writings and histories to look over and reflect over a period of time. So, I didn't want to belabor y'all too long, but like I said, I felt that I need to share that, seeing that and hearing things about misinformation that's being transmitted. And with that, I say everybody have a good Shabbat, and any mistakes other than that in my lesson, been my own. So leave a comment, and I'll try to address them and correct it if I can.
Hallelujah. Torah about Nasik. May the Most High
sure.
God bless you, and may the Most High God bless each and every one of you. Shalom, shalom.
Shalom.